welcome to Group Y Live. I'm your host, Ollie Russell Cowan. I'm stoked to be joined by filmmaker Monica Medellin. Monica shares her journey from growing up in LA with a passion for surfing and filmmaking to becoming an executive producer in the action sports industry. We're going to be talking about her path from journalism and documentary filmmaking, highlighting the importance of representation in sports. Monica reflects on her time at the World Surf League, her experience creating surf girls and working with major brands such as Red Bull and Nike. She also talks about overcoming imposter syndrome, navigating industry challenges, and her upcoming projects. Let's jump into it. Hey, Monica. How you doing?
Hey, Ollie. Nice to see you.
You too. Thanks for coming on. Great to have you on Group Y. And yeah, you're over in LA at the moment, I take it, right?
Yep, based in Los Angeles, born and raised on the West Side. So
nice. And are you kind of located where you grew up? Because you were like growing up around like Santa Monica, Venice way, right?
yeah, I mean, I lived in Santa Monica, Venice my whole life. And then recently I moved a little bit north, more towards Malibu and Ventura. I really wanted to embrace the surf life a little bit more. And I mean, with everything that's happening on the West Side, it's also a little more affordable to get housing over here.
Yep.
So it was kind of a win-win situation to have the best surfer life I could possibly have with a house that can accommodate all of my boards, my gear, a driveway, a full backyard, things that are very uncommon in LA.
I'd love to, if that's okay with you, kind of just jump into that connection between, growing up, surfing and picking up a camera. And yeah, I was just curious if that kind of happened at the same time or if one came before the other.
Yeah. I mean, the first time I picked up a camera, it was my mom's / family's family like camcorder. It must have been in our garage. And growing up in Venice and Santa Monica, we lived very close to the beach, fortunately. And I would grab my friends, we would grab our skateboards, and we would skate down the street to the beach. So we started filming each other skating from a very young age. And I would edit these skate videos. Our skill level wasn't super high, but I would edit these skate videos to like System of a Down and like random music that we were listening to at the time, and kind of make like our version of core skate films. They were horrible. I wish I could show them to you. They're just like not even usable at this point, but it was the first stab at like creativity that I think I had as far as filmmaking goes. So that was super fun and memorable.
And what were you doing with those videos? Were they going onto social or were like onto YouTube at the time, or?
I must have been a preteen at this point. So social media wasn't really a thing. Like this was the time when we would go to the Apple store to take photos of ourselves in the photo booth.
Yeah.
And, we didn't have cell phones. We had an ancient computer that had like dial up and AOL and all these things. So I would actually edit on this clunky computer and I would edit them in iMovie. So it was not the most sophisticated technology, but it was something. And we just kind of made videos for ourselves and we would show our family, we'd show our friends, but social media wasn't really a thing at that point. Like maybe on MySpace, we would occasionally upload it. But I think that's what I loved about this beginning phase of filmmaking is we were really making films for ourselves. And I think right now, as I've developed in my career and had successes, it's like, how can I go back to that feeling of just making films for the joy of making them?
Yeah. Instead of kind of having all these different like motives or like kind of the reasoning behind that, right? Obviously, it's looking at like paying the bills, but then kind of, I guess sometimes, especially if it's sort of commercial projects, if you're not like super keen into it and that passion can potentially get lost, right?
Yeah. And I just feel like, as you make it through the rungs of a very difficult industry in film and TV in particular, it's like, I'm so focused on, well, what is the market doing? What is the industry doing? What's the most sellable idea? Like, how am I going to get this funded from investors when like those things are very important, but it also loses that root of why I started in the first place too. Luckily, I found a world where I can kind of combine both of those things, but There are a lot of concessions that I have to make as a filmmaker now that are different than when I was first starting out. So
Yeah. And how come? So you went to University of Oregon and studied journalism. Like what? Like were you keen into writing as well when all that was going on? And
yeah, I was super attracted to journalism because I loved storytelling. And I felt like this was a really good opportunity to tell stories about me, my friends, my community, stories that I'd never seen represented on the big screen, right? Like growing up in LA to an immigrant single working mom who worked in public school, were Mexican, there were only so many portrayals of like immigrant Mexican folks on TV. We were like the maids, or we were like the drug lords, or like there was just a very narrow view of what, people from my culture and background look like. So I was hoping to expand those depictions and show, that people from my community are multidimensional. We love action sports. I love skating. I love surfing. And we're out here, participating in these activities. So at the time, I obviously wasn't, my mindset wasn't really, you know, in the same place that it is now, but I just knew that I wanted to make films that represented me. So
yeah,
that's how it kind of started.
and your group of friends and your community, right? And sort of, I guess that then ties in with if you then skating, surfing, doing all these things in the area with your friends. It's like how do you then depict that and kind of tell those stories?
Yeah, totally. And I mean, being born and raised on the border of Venice, Santa Monica, like Dogtown is my backyard. I've seen every phase of the gentrification of my community where I grew up. And I kind of wanted to, keep the vibe alive and show, that we're out here, we're young women, and, we love doing what the boys do. I think that was
Yeah.
always my thing, is like I always was one of the only girls in sports camp. I remember I was the only girl at surf camp, one year. And I just feel like instead of using that as an excuse to quit or shy away, I actually used it as fuel to inspire more girls to kind of get into the things that I like to do, even though they were a little bit like non-traditional or unconventional at the time, right? So that was really fun.
And how did you find that at university? I mean, were you kind of joining like the sports groups and teams, and were you kind of like getting involved in it there, or did that then come later?
Yeah, I mean, I've been a sports girl for as long as I can remember, even though, my mom and I grew up on government assistance. We lived in community corp housing, even though it was by the beach. Like, we definitely grew up like under resourced in a lot of ways. She made it a point to make sure that I was participating in as many extracurricular activities as possible. So she would find the sports scholarship to send me to soccer camp. She would talk to, the owner of the club volleyball team and, pitch why they should let her daughter into the club type thing. So she was just such a hustler, and she always emphasized being physically active and being involved in your community. And she knew early on that I had a gift and I had a talent in sports. So she always pushed me to pursue sports. So by the time I was applying to colleges, I knew that I wanted a big sports school. And Oregon at the time, I mean, the Oregon Ducks, they were a big deal. This was like, I graduated in 2015. We had LaMichael James, DeAnthony Thomas, like all of these like legend football players. And I was like, I want to go to a football game every weekend. I want to be immersed in sports. I want to be in Tracktown, USA, where Olympians are born. Like, that's just the environment that I wanted to be in. So that had a big influence on why I chose University of Oregon over other universities. And I mean, it was one of the only schools that I was really interested in going to and got into. So I think that's what really informed University of Oregon. And then journalism sort of came naturally after that.
Hmm. And then when you kind of left, like you did a couple of internships, and like LA Times being one of them, was that then working like on the journalism side, or was that sort of, I guess, the beginning of well, the continuation of the film journey after, you know, kind of like doing those projects with your friends or when you were growing up? Like, yeah, what was the transition? What happened there?
The transition to journalism.
Yeah, the transition from journalism into then
Mm.
filmmaking and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty natural because at university there was a filmmaking class that I took in the journalism school.
Nice.
And we had to make like a documentary and a narrative film, and that was sort of like our final project for the year. So I made my first films officially, you know, in university, and that introduced me to video journalism, which very smoothly transitioned into documentary filmmaking. So my first internship out of college was at the LA Times here in Los Angeles, and I made a weekly documentary highlighting someone in my community that I thought was interesting. So I think those two things, it was never like an active decision of like, I'm going to go into filmmaking. It just kind of naturally and organically transitioned to doc filmmaking from
Mm-hmm.
journalism. And all of those journalism like skill sets and tools and ethical storytelling tips that I learned in college, like really, really informed my documentary filmmaking and how I approach filmmaking, how I approach interviewing people, how I approach the editing room. Like, I just think without that piece of my story, I would be a very different storyteller. So I'm very grateful for those years sort of in the newsroom, you know, grinding in journalism because it really, really helped me in my journey now.
And how was the team that you were working with? Did you have sort of people that were mentoring you kind of internally there, or were you kind of seeking it out from outside the
Yeah.
organization?
So when I was at the LA Times, the founder of the production company that I was working for had just launched a venture with the newspaper. And he just believed in me from the start. Like, I don't
Nice.
know what it is, but any opportunity that I wanted, regardless of my experience, he would encourage me to go try it. And I think having a boss like that and having a company culture like that was really, really healthy and really, really fun for me. And it built my confidence in a way that I don't think would have happened at another company. Like, he encouraged me to go make my first film. He encouraged me to go film something on a camera that I was super new to using and YouTube how to use it, right? Like,
Yeah.
it was that mindset of initiation by fire, like figuring it out. And kind of, I think he really taught me that the best filmmaking school is making films. And I think that's something that I've passed on to the next generation. Like, I didn't go to formal film school, but I made a lot of films by the time I was in my mid 20s. And I made so many mistakes. I learned so many valuable lessons. And that wouldn't have happened within the walls of a classroom. That was really because I was out there making films. I was out there being uncomfortable and not knowing what I was doing a lot of the time. So I think his influence on me in that job and at the LA Times was really, really, it really shaped me to be who I am today. So,
Did that kind of give you the inspiration and kind of, I guess, the desire to then go and set up your own kind of production thing, which was the Narnar Hunnies, right? Was that sort of what spurred that on? It's an amazing name, by the way. I love that.
yeah, yeah. The Narnar Hunnies no longer exists, but that was such an important part of my journey and my co founder's journey because that was our first accidental production company. And we never started it with the intention of having a company. We just wanted to make films that represented women in action sports and show what we could do and what we were made of. And it just naturally turned into something bigger than we could have ever imagined. So it almost goes back to what we were talking about in the beginning, where it's like the root of my filmmaking journey was making films that I wanted to make and that I love to make. And I think the Narnar Hunnies was so successful at that time because that was our same mentality. And on top of it, we had social media. So Instagram was popping off, we were on YouTube, and we were just unapologetically, like, not even very strategically, just posting all of our videos to the internet. And that's when people started to take notice. I mean, I think maybe the algorithm was perhaps a bit easier back then. It wasn't as like oversaturated with content all the time. We were really utilizing video, and people took notice. And all of those videos that we posted, skating, surfing, just going around LA highlighting women in sports, caught the attention of brands like Red Bull, like Nike LA, and it turned into paid commercial opportunities for us to direct and produce, film, edit, shoot. So I don't know, that was just such a important time of my career. And it goes to show, if if you make the film that you want to make, the rest will fall into place.
Were those brands, were they reaching out to you? Or was it like a bit of both?
We were literally getting DMs from producers at
Nike or Red Bull. Yeah.
At Red Bull, Los Angeles, North America. And then I guess it would be Red Bull North America. And then those turned into, larger commercial opportunities down the line. So nice. It was, I mean, that's exactly how my first TV show happened as well. Like, I received a DM from a production company that was looking for pitches about women's sports documentaries. And I was like, oh, I have the perfect one. Like, that wasn't something that I reached out to somebody for. They came to me, and it just goes to show the power of promoting your work unapologetically and using, the algorithm in your favor to connect you with people that are like-minded and believe in the work that you're doing. So yeah, that is something that I teach, that philosophy, to every filmmaker that's up and coming. They're like, oh, I want to work in, this women in sports niche. And I'm like, okay, what content are you posting this week? What are you doing to put yourself out there so people can take notice of your work? And
if you're part of that community, it's real, right? It's like you're doing it. It's not like you can't fake these things. It's like you're either, you're either part of it, or you're doing it, or you're not, No.
I mean, in my first ever skate video, I need to go to my mom's garage and find this. The one that I edited to System of a Down, Chop Suey. I remember it so clearly. We did fake a few tricks with cutting from different camera angles. So we would cut between one trick and then cut to us landing it, just to pretend that we landed. It doesn't matter. It was just so funny because there were no limits. There were no perimeter. Nobody, it was for us. So I just think, as far as that goes, that's a funny tidbit. But in the action sports industry, you're kind of in it or you're not. So,
and if it's and it's on that verge of it's considered, it's sport, but it's creative freedom, it's art as well, right? I mean, as cheesy as that sounds. So it's sort of it's especially with skating and with surfing. With all of that, then was that then what led to working at the World Surf League, or was okay?
So, oh man, I don't even think I told this story to Salema when I saw him last, but I remember applying for a very entry-level social media producer, video role at the World Surf League. I knew, because I didn't have any previous action sports industry experience, that I would need to kind of work my way from the bottom up. So I took a role cut, a pay cut. I just had no ego. I was like, let me just get in here because I really want to work at this company. I got an interview, and I used all of my Narnar Hunnies work as my portfolio to show the hiring supervisor that I was a part of the action sports industry, that I know about surfing, I know about skating, and that I think this is a really great transition for me in my career in action sports. And he loved it. He was like, this is so cool. You just made all of this stuff on your own without a brand. And I was like, yeah, can you hire me? And he was like, well, we need to do a few more rounds of interviews here. So I remember I spoke to him. I think I did 3 rounds of interviews. And it was really that base of Narnar Hunnies work, those video portfolio, that kind of got me through the door there. And I had to brush up on my knowledge of professional surfing, obviously study up who's on the championship tour, kind of study the pro surfers on the come up, study, all the surf spots that I had dreamed of going to. I remember they asked me about like different spots in Hawaii to kind of test my surf IQ. So I definitely had to prepare in a lot of ways. But that whole experience it was basically the most surprising part of my journey, I guess you could say.
Oh, really?
Like, I never thought I would end up working at a sports league because of, the passion projects that I made about women in sport. That just was never the goal, but it ended up working out perfectly. So.
And then it kind of, I guess you sort of see under the bonnet on terms of like the representation and the content and things that were being done there. And I've heard you kind of say like, with what you had to put out in terms of social media, there'd be the majority of the clips or of the footage would be of the male surfers in comparison to the females. And yeah, I mean, that's all kind of just linking back to then, that storytelling, that representation, that kind of being, equal as it should be. But at that time, it wasn't all right.
Yeah, I mean, after I'd gone through the interview process, I was hired for the role. My number one goal was to do a great job in that role. So my job was to post every day to social media, the World Surf League social media page, which had, I think, nearly 3 million followers. I don't know if we had broken into that at that point, but we would post about the surfers on tour. So that would be a surf clip of them warming up. It'd be like a surf clip of them, on a surf trip, some like just anything that would kind of get engagement from our core fans. Mm-hmm. I did notice at that time that it was very male heavy. It's like, I feel like I've posted like 1 million clips of Kelly, 1 million clips of Connor, 1 million, like they're all amazing surfers, but why aren't we posting at least a few women in the mix? Yeah. Like the women surfers on the CT side and Challenger side are so talented and
they're amazing.
That spotlight. So I remember, proposing that we start posting evenly throughout the week about our male surfers and our female surfers. And my team and boss, were 100% supportive of that. And we actually ended up doing that for the next few months. So I think that was something that was embedded from that time that still lives on today. Like even today, when I go to the page, I just see that it's more evenly distributed between the two. And I'm just so proud of, how much I contributed at that time at such an entry level role, right? Yeah. My goal was never to like change the culture or like, shift the narrative. It was just like what I thought was fair and equitable and just. And I was like, the women are equally talented. Like, let's run it. Let's make sure that they're seen too.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like when you sort of like, when the WSL, like that was kind of the whole during COVID, wasn't it? I guess that period, right?
Yes.
I mean, then what happened? Like, how was that then filming and kind of, were there projects popping up after that during the pandemic? Was it kind of, or were you like, you like had to put the feelers out, you had to kind of really try and hunt for work during that time?
Yeah. So a big selling point of the role that I was hired for was that I would be able to go on tour for the year and capture social content. So I was meant to go on every single tour stop on the schedule that year. I hadn't traveled too much at that point in my life. Like it was just such a dream opportunity. But then that March 2020 that everyone probably remembers, I had my tickets booked to Australia for the Australia leg of the CT. And that same week, everything shut down. So my like traveling dreams were just crushed. And we ended up just like masking, staying in LA, working remote, and I never had the chance to go on tour again. So that was sort of like the biggest bummer about it all. And actually that winter, there were a lot of layoffs happening, and I ended up getting laid off later that year. So there really wasn't an opportunity to go back on tour that year. I thought, oh, maybe if I get through this year, then next year I can do it. that just never panned out for me. But, looking back on that time, you just think it's the end of the world. You think it's such a big deal, and then you realize everything happens for a reason. And I've been able to travel the world on my own terms in a different way now. So I think ultimately, it was just a good learning lesson.
Mm-hmm. And like, when you were there, were you trying to kind of build up your network or your contacts, or was it just happening between chatting to the athletes or the team, the executives, whoever it may be, which kind of then I guess leads to the TV show, right? And which is amazing. Like how I'd love to hear more about that. How that all came about.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I was actively trying to build my network or contacts.
It just happens. Just kind of.
It just happened naturally. Because I was responsible for posting surf clips of athletes on our Instagram page, I would reach out to athletes, their filmers, and ask them for permission or high-res clips to get it done. So I would always sign the message like, hey, could you send us over this high-res clip? Oh, can you send us over this clip from Indo? Oh, whatever. And then I'd sign it from Monica. So I think over time I was doing that for many, many months. They knew that it was a request coming from Monica at the World Surf League. So that's how I sort of started building my relationship with people. That then turned into them finding my personal profile, interacting naturally, like just becoming online friends, if you will. And that's actually how I ended up meeting all of the cast from Surf Girls. I didn't know that I was going to make a TV show at that time. I just thought that these girls were really amazing. They were completely ripping. They were super young. They were Native Hawaiian, and there was something special about them. And I knew that Carissa Moore was mentoring them and training them and developing them to be the next generation of surfers on tour. So that's how it all happened. I mean, we just naturally ended up connecting on Instagram and keeping that relationship even after my time at the WSL, because we just shared so much in common, and it's just a connection that, is kind of unbreakable at this point. Like, we've been friends for over 6 years at this point. So
nice. And did you think back then, like kind of when you had that idea that you would try and go for the streaming platforms straight away, or were you like, look, I think I've got something here, let's go big, let's try and get it on
I was
the Netflix and the Amazons and the Primes of the world?
That was just not, it's just so funny. Like, that was just not even on my mind. And it goes to show, like, you have to make good work before you can even think about getting it on these platforms. So it's like you're kind of thinking about chicken before the egg. If someone's like, hey, I want to get my show on Netflix, and you're like, okay, well, you need to make a Netflix worthy show. So you have some things to do before taking that step, right? So at that time, I just loved Carissa. I loved the group that she was mentoring of these young Native Hawaiian surfer girls. And I knew that I wanted to share that story in some way. So I was like, maybe I could make a short doc for YouTube. Maybe we could make a social media series. Maybe we could I just want to make something, because I feel like this group is too special to pass up on as a filmmaker. And I don't see any high quality films or storytelling around this group of women yet. I want to be the first. So that's when I decided to grab the network of women in my filmmaking network and make a YouTube series with these girls. So that YouTube series ended up being funded by a production partner that had DM'd me asking me for pitches. So that's how the whole thing came to be.
And that's the production company. That's Reese Witherspoon's. It's that production, or is it that someone else?
This was they're heavy hitters still, but it was a smaller production company around women in sports. And this was founded by Alex Morgan, Sue Bird, Simone Manuel, and Chloe Kim, who are all Olympic female athletes.
Yeah.
And they had launched a production company called Together that was highlighting women in sports, storytelling around women in sports. And I had the opportunity to pitch them. And then I had this awesome group of girls. And I was like, oh, this lines up perfectly. Let me make a formal pitch around the Surf Girls. because I think that this is something that a company like Together would want to invest in. And they did. They ended up investing in that documentary series. We launched it on their YouTube. It's garnered over 1 million views, since it's been posted. And that was the beginning of what you see on TV, which is Surf Girls Hawaii. That was really the first step. After we published that YouTube video series and kind of got some attention, that's when Reese Witherspoon's company, Hello Sunshine, came on and saw the impact and the value and further invested in the series. And then obviously has those amazing connections to streaming platforms. So again, I just feel like there's this theme in my career where I want to work really hard. I want to make the films that I want to make. And I trusted the process that things would just happen organically from that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and with the TV show Surfer Girls, that was a pinnacle year for surfing as a sport going into its first Olympics as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would say at the time that I was pitching the YouTube version of Surf Girls to my production partner Together, it was the first year that surfing was featured in the Olympics. Carissa Moore, who's a native Hawaiian surfer, won gold at the Tokyo Olympics. And surfing was, predicted to be a multi-billion-dollar industry. So with all of those factors and the amazing women athletes that I had access to, I just thought it was a no-brainer when going into that pitch meeting. And I think that's why, the show ended up selling and becoming so successful and turning into a TV show.
Nice. And yeah, I mean, it was sort of fantastic to sort of see then kind of where it's gone. And yeah, hopefully there'll be another season, but I don't know if we can talk about that.
I can't say, but we should know soon here. I'm really excited to see the direction that Surf Girls is going in, and that's all I can share right now.
Nice. And how was it as a creator, like both as sort of, I guess, an executive producer and being behind the camera, having then like going from smaller teams and filming to a massive crew? It was like sort of like 30 people or something, wasn't there? Like that you were.
Yeah. Which is funny because that is, I mean, depending on the production, right? Like our production was definitely smaller scale, like not too heavy.
When you were doing the first like initial.
Yes.
The initial show, yeah.
But even for the Prime Video show, right? Like 30 people was a lot for me because I went from being a one-woman band with like 2 of my girlfriends to all of a sudden 30 people being hired and paid to work on something that you created. That was the trippiest transition about the entire experience. Like the first day that I showed up on set, I just remember looking around and thinking to myself privately, I can't believe all of these people are here because of something that you created. Like that is all I need to feel like I succeeded in my career, right? It was just like such a special opportunity to share that with the crew. And a lot of the crew were local Hawaii native people, right? A lot of the crew were, locals who depend on productions coming to Hawaii and hiring them. So I just feel like this subject matter and this show was also something different for the crew on island. Like they had never seen a show like this. So it was just all around a really special feeling to have, played a part in that experience for everybody.
And how did you feel? Like, did that make you feel did you feel the pressure because of that, or was it's just like this is an amazing, compliment having all these people that believe in the story and sort of, I guess that pumps you up and just gets you stoked.
I mean, I always put pressure on myself. Like, I think, from what we're talking about, it sounds like I was just going with the flow, letting things happen to me. It's like, I definitely want to create the best work I can possibly make. I definitely want to make an impact through the films that I make. And working on my own show was no different than that. I think the number one thing that I was up against was just myself in a lot of ways. Like I wasn't even 30 years old and I was an executive producer on a TV show for a top streaming platform. all of my peers and other executives had been working in the industry for 20 plus years. Like they have so much experience, so much seniority. And I always felt like, well, they know what they're talking about. I don't know what I'm talking about. But what I realized was that was just a completely false narrative that I told myself. Like I brought so much to the table on this show without even knowing it, consciously. And I think, a big part of creating a TV show from such a young age and so early in my career is that I had to learn to believe in myself and shoo away those negative voices because it's very easy to fall into that trap and think that you're not good enough or you don't belong there. Because of your age or life experience or where you came from or whatever it may be. So I think that was the biggest struggle that I had working on the show. What you see on social media and Instagram, is me being a complete boss babe, thriving like on island, working on the show of my dreams. And while that's true, I think internally I was really struggling with imposter syndrome and feeling like I don't belong in a lot of ways because I don't come from the traditional film and TV background. I was just an action sports fanatic, filmmaker, turned TV show executive very quickly. So I think that was something that maybe people wouldn't see from the outside in.
Yeah. I mean, were you kind of looking at, because some of the projects and some of the companies that you were working with before that are like massive. I mean, kind of like doing stuff with Nike, doing stuff with Red Bull, like all of that must have been like, like I belong here. I know what I'm doing. Like that's kind of got to like spur you on, no matter like what the other executives or kind of what people are saying, or if there's any kind of like the different side of social media, when it kind of gets negative.
Yeah, and I think that's what I've found just through my now 10 years of experience, in both the brand and commercial and the film and TV industry, is that all of my production experience was applicable, regardless of what format I'm working in, right? Like what's important also is, the storytelling aspect. Who are you as a storyteller? What kinds of stories do you want to tell? How can you pull out the authenticity and nuance from the films that you're making and the people that you're working with? So I think those things can't be taught, through, skills in the industry necessarily. But yeah, I did have a lot of experience working in like commercial and branded documentary, but those films were probably only about 10 minutes in length, and they were created for digital platforms like YouTube or commercial purposes like for Instagram Reels. When I moved to creating a TV show, like we were filming 45 minutes of tape per episode. Like you had to fill 4 blocks, so 4 episodes of 45-minute. Like that was so overwhelming to me. I was like, I've never made anything over 20 minutes. So I think that experience was really useful for me just to see how, these seasoned executives approach a story of this scale. How, we film day to day, how we set up our editor in post-production. Like these are all skill sets that make sense to me, but I had never actually been in a room working on a project of this length and scale. So I think that was the biggest difference between, working with the Nikes and Red Bulls of the world and then working on a TV show, for a big streaming platform like Prime Video. I think the best part about that experience was that I was working with Reese Witherspoon's company, Hello Sunshine, and they're the best in the game. So I'm learning everything from some of the best in the industry, people who have done this for a very long time. And I'm kind of learning how they approach projects and then also putting my own personal twist on it. So I think this whole experience was just a win-win situation for me. And I learned a lot and try to pass down that knowledge, to the next generation of filmmakers. You can't Google this stuff. You can't Google how to make a TV show. You have to just go do it.
Yeah.
And you a lot of this stuff is super gate kept too, and people don't talk about it. And I want to be the person that shares my experience and provides opportunities for the next generation so they don't have to feel like they're in the dark about how things work and how shows get made.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of, I guess, sort of ties into like on the gatekeeping side of things. I mean, for like looking at like Red Bull and Rampage, and yeah, just seeing what went down with all the female riders there was absolutely amazing. And how was it being a part of that?
Red Bull reached out to have me direct a documentary series following the pro women mountain bikers on their road to Rampage. So that was very unexpected, but a very cool opportunity. My producer at Red Bull shared with me that she reached out to me because she loved what I did with Surf Girls, and she wanted to sort of apply my filmmaking style to Red Bull content. So that was a huge compliment, and I loved working with her on the project. And we traveled to Whistler, we traveled to Utah. Like it was just, I was so out of my depths because I started working in surfing primarily, and then I moved into action sports, and then I got into more traditional sports, but like mountain biking was not something that was on my checklist. Yeah. Like that just happened so randomly and organically, but it was so much fun. I got to witness women making history at Rampage for the first time after 20 years of being excluded from
of not having a seat when
yeah,
it was always just kind of pushed off, right? And
and how fitting that I just felt like I had such a shared experience with these women, like just as far as my filmmaking journey, right? Like I didn't wait for other people to give me an opportunity. Like I really had to knock the doors down and find my own way. And in a similar way, these women are doing the same thing in their sport. And I would say, the number one reason why they were even competing at Rampage is because of the years and years of dedication and hard work and pressure that they put, on the industry to include them. So that was just a very, very inspiring project to work on. And we've submitted the project to a few film festivals. They've been accepted, and I can't wait to see what happens with that film series this year. So
nice. And like now kind of looking 2025, looking what's coming up, and sort of over the past decade, like working across action sports, traditional sports, what do you think you want to focus on? And is there any sort of any particular projects or anything that any stories that you want to tell?
Yeah, I want to continue telling stories around women in sports in the sports documentary space. I think that's a really exciting space to be a part of right now. Women's sports viewership and investment is just skyrocketing. I'm sure you've seen. And I'm just really excited for all of the women athletes that are finally being recognized and seen and featured on the biggest platforms in the world. I have a few exciting developments in the sports doc space. I'm profiling 2 new groups of female athletes in different sports. That's all I can share at this point. But between, creating the first women's sports documentary on Prime Video and then working on the Red Bull Rampage series, I'm really looking forward to creating, my milestone project for 2025 and 2026. So
nice. And do you always kind of like, is there one big thing that you'd like want to do, sort of looking at the year, and then obviously there's like then different commercial projects that may fit around that? Is that normally kind of how you approach it, or?
So with the LA 2028 Olympics coming to my hometown of Los Angeles, I'm really excited to share more about a few female athletes that I've been following for the past couple of months. So that should be coming out the end of 2025, early 2026. But most of my decision making as far as like what film I want to make is really just around, my own community, which women are sort of breaking ground in their respective field and respective sport,
Mhm.
and what's sort of aligning with the larger conversation around women in sports. Like flag football is going to be in LA 2028 for the first
Oh,
time.
really? Oh, I didn't know
Be
that. Okay,
men and women competing.
nice.
So that's a really big deal in my mind. And I would love to find, a flag footballer girl, to follow and tell a story around. So yeah. Did I get through that answer?
Yeah, you did.
That was a hard
That's
one.
great. And it's kind of, yeah, everything kind of gearing up towards the Olympics, right? In terms of it's being in your hometown, that's super exciting, right? And all
Yeah.
those stories. I remember when it was in London, like where I'm from, and it's a different thing. Like when the Olympics is kind of in your city, and you're there to kind of take part of it, and yeah, it's great.
Yeah, totally. And I think, it's really odd, but I feel like people watch the Olympics, they're super locked in. They love the sports that they love during the Olympics. And then
Yeah.
there's a 4-year gap where everyone forgets about everything that they just watched and they go
Hmm.
back to their normal lives. And then 4 years later, locked in again. I
Yeah.
really want to fill that gap and tell more stories around these amazing athletes that might only get attention during the Olympic hour, right? Like, how can we do deeper storytelling around athletes and sports that deserve it, in my opinion? So, LA 2028, between now and then, I'm really excited to tell more stories around women participating in sports that are going to be making history in for the first time. So,
Nice. And like looking back over the last 10 years, all the kind of the work that you've done from journalism through to filmmaking, documentary filmmaking, TV shows, commercials, brand campaigns, what advice would you give? I mean, or like if there's sort of something that you could pass on to people that would like look to get into it. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I would just say make the film that you want to make and the industry will follow. I think, paying attention to the direction of the industry, what's selling, what's trending is really important. But ultimately, you have to make something that feels authentic to you and
Mhm.
that you're extremely passionate about, especially in the beginning of your career. You can save the rest for later, right? There's going to be plenty of time, to make films that align with the industry, but there's a finite amount of time to really, you know, tap into what you truly want to make. So that's my biggest advice.
If people want to follow what you're up to, and yeah, I've got to mention the newsletter as well to like because you're kind of like that kind of ties in with the advice bit. If you are interested in getting in contact or finding more about what you're working on, what's the best way?
So I write a free weekly newsletter every single week on Saturday mornings, and I teach actionable, tangible advice to help emerging filmmakers navigate the film and TV industry. It is literally the exact resource that I wish I had when I was creating my first TV show and gearing up towards, building my career in the film industry.
Mhm.
So you can find that at learn.monicamedellin.com/wavesmadeweekly. And I kept the surfer vibe true with that because it's called the Waves Made Weekly newsletter. So really
Nice
exciting
one.
there.
Cool. Well, Monica, it was amazing having you on the show, chatting, hearing all the stories, and yeah, look forward to seeing everything that happens coming up, gearing towards the games, and yeah, just all those stories and projects that are going to be told before that as well. It's going to be exciting.
Thank you so much, Ollie.